alaikum. Today we're going to talk about an amazing Sahaba who really is an amazing character in all of history, especially for us Muslims. We're going to talk about, actually, I'll give you a few hints and let's see if you can guess. He was the first mu'adhin in Islam, and he was also a very dark-skinned man. Your last hint is that he was the 7th one to become a Muslim. Do you know who it is? It's Sayyidina Bilal ibn Rabah radiyallahu anhu. Sayyidina Bilal ibn Rabah was born to an Arab man who was a slave for the people of Banu Humah, and they were a clan from the people of Mecca. His mother was once the princess of Abyssinia, but she was captured and she was also made a slave. Sayyidina Bilal was the slave of Umayyah, who was known to be cruel to his slaves and always mistreated them. And he was one of the big heads of Quraysh, and he was the head of his clan called Bin Jumah. Sayyidina Bilal suffered a lot with his master. He would often send him on trips to Sham or Syria during the cold of the winter and during the extreme hots of the summer with only dates as nourishment. When he would come back from those trips, he would serve people food while he himself was starving from hunger. When the Prophet Muhammad received the revelation and people started hearing about this thing called Islam, Bilal would often hear angry discussions about this man Muhammad. At first, Bilal didn't really know what was going on, but one day he was called to Islam by Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and his heart was filled with peace and iman as soon as he heard about it, and he accepted Islam and was the 7th person to accept Islam. When his master Umayyah found out that Bilal accepted Islam, he was absolutely furious. And you need to really realize how brave and courageous Bilal must have been to accept Islam, because at the time the people of Quraysh were the rudest and cruelest to the poor and weak who were accepting Islam, because they can't do anything to people who are of high status like Abu Bakr. So instead they were punishing the poor and the weak for becoming Muslim. And so when Umayyah found out that Bilal became Muslim, he would punish him day and night, and Bilal would never falter. He would always say, Ahadun Ahad, Allah is one, Allah is one. And he would endure the torture and he would never say anything except Ahadun Ahad. And he would stand strong. One day, Sayyidina Abu Bakr passed by while this was going on. He told Umayyah, have you no fear from Allah to treat this poor man in such a way? Umayyah told him, you corrupted him, you made him Muslim, go ahead, save him from what he's going through. Abu Bakr told him, fine, sell him to me, name your price. So Umayyah, to belittle him, he sold him for only maybe 10 ounces of gold. And he told Abu Bakr, you know what, I would have sold him for only 1 ounce. And then Abu Bakr said, a man like him, I would have bought him even if you sold him to me for 100 ounces of gold. And then Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Bilal together anhum, went to the Prophet Muhammad and they told him, and Sayyidina Abu Bakr told him, I'm going to free this man. Sayyidina Muhammad was so happy, and you can only imagine how happy Bilal must have been to become a free man by the hands of such an amazing person, Sayyidina Abu Bakr. And you need to remember that in Islam, all men are equal and all women are equal. He was their brother in Islam, and he was no different from anyone else of the Muslims. In fact, Umar radiallahu anhu used to say that Abu Bakr is a master and he freed our master, which was Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anhu. And Bilal was so humble, he would tell him, I'm only a man who used to be a slave. I'm not a master. To help you imagine the picture of Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anhu, the strong man, he used to be a tall, thin man, and he was very dark in skin, and he had bushy African hair. He was also known to have a handsome nose, and he was slightly hunchback because of all the slave work that he had to go through. Years after All of this had happened in Mecca. As you know, the Prophet ﷺ had made hijrah to Medina. There, Bilal became the first mu'adhin. Do you know the story of how Adhan was introduced to Islam? Let me tell you. While the Prophet ﷺ was in Medina, they wanted to figure out how they should call people to prayer. At first, a few people suggested, how about we blow on a trumpet, like how the Jews do it? But the Prophet didn't really like that idea. And then someone suggested, how about we ring a bell, like how the Christians do it? The Prophet really didn't like that idea much either. They were like, okay, how about we beat on a drum? The Prophet still wasn't really happy with that idea either. And so, one day, this man, Abdullah bin Zayd, had a dream. He had an amazing dream that he saw a man wearing 2 green garments carrying a bell. He went to him and he asked him, can I buy this bell from you? So the man asked him, why do you want to buy this bell? He told him, I want it so that we can use it to call people to prayer. So the man in the green garments asked him, do you want me to tell you about something that's even better for you to use for prayer? How about you say, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاح حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. As soon as Abdullah bin Zayd woke up, he knew that this was the perfect call to prayer for the Muslims. He rushed to Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ and he told him, I dreamt this last night. And the Prophet told him, your dream is true. This is what's going to happen now. He told Bilal, oh Bilal, you were the one to say Ahadun Ahad. You were the one to repeat about Allah's Tawheed. After everything you endured, you will have the honor to be the first person to call in Allah's name the people to prayer. He stood up on a high building and he called the call to prayer. And then Umar rushed the Prophet. He told him, oh Prophet Muhammad, I just dreamt the same dream. I heard this in my dream. Subhanallah.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
You know, Bilal, when he would call for prayer, he would often afterwards go to the Prophet's house and he would knock on the door and he would tell him, Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala falah, O Prophet. And the Prophet would be filled with joy and they would go pray together. The Prophet used to say to Bilal, Arihna biha ya Bilal. Oh Bilal, give us the peace of it. Comfort us with it, with the adhan. Subhanallah. And then as you know, eventually this happy time with Prophet Muhammad came to an end. And Prophet Muhammad ﷺ passed away. After that, when Bilal was calling the call for prayer at his funeral, at his janazah prayer, when he reached the words, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, he could not continue. And then after that, he broke down crying and he swore that he would never call adhan ever again, because he could not bear in his heart to call adhan when the Prophet is not there to be at their side. And you can imagine how painful that must have been. After some time, Bilal couldn't bear in his heart to be in Medina anymore. He asked Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anh if he can go to Syria for jihad, and he went to Syria for jihad and he stayed there and he lived the rest of his life there. And he only called for prayer twice more. Once at Jerusalem, when Sayyidina Umar had opened Jerusalem and he told him, oh Bilal, we want your call for prayer, we miss it. And he called the call for prayer and the people broke down crying because it had been so long since they heard this beautiful voice and it reminded them of happier times while Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was still around them. The second time was when he had visited the Prophet's grave ﷺ in Medina, and after that he never called the call for prayer again. What a beautiful and heart-touching story. Sayyidina Bilal really shows us how we should always stand strong, no matter what we go through in life, no matter what people say to us. You know, Sayyidina Bilal, even after he accepted Islam, even after he became joined with his brothers in Islam, sometimes he would hear rude comments, and Sayyidina Bilal always forgave them, and he knew in his heart that Allah will never look at at what we are from the outside. What matters is from the inside, and Sayyidina Bilal worked very hard to be one of the best Muslims. Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anhu used to always have wudu, to the point where radiallahu anhu, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would tell radiallahu anhu, Bilal, I have heard your footsteps in Jannah. Can you imagine? A man so amazing that the Prophet can hear his footsteps in Jannah. MashaAllah. And here's a fun fact for the Syrian audience. Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anh died in Halab. What an honor. I really enjoyed this story, just as I've been enjoying all the stories I've been telling you so far, and I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I have. Thank you for watching this episode, and Ramadan Kareem. I hope to see you guys again soon. Assalamu alaikum.